Yesterday, tragedy struck New York City. A man with a rifle shot and killed 5 people, of which this includes himself. Now, the motive is believed to be that he was suffering from CTE. They say they found a note in his pocket that says, the NFL, you can't go up against them, and he was targeting their offices. Now, that's at least the official narrative that we know now. However, there's an interesting new conspiracy bubbling up behind the scenes. I'm not one to entertain the veracity of conspiracies, but there is still something that should be brought up as to why this conspiracy has gained prominence. That is, this man, TAMURA, they call him, that's his name, went to an office that was supposed to be, according to a letter they found in his pocket, the NFL. Instead, he went up to the 33rd floor, which was the Blackstone offices. There, he shot and killed several people. Now, he did shoot people in the lobby as well, which does include an NFL employee. That's why I say I don't give too much credence to conspiracy theories, but there is an interesting underlying thread here. Blackstone has been heavily criticized by the left for providing lots of money to Israel. One of the executives that was killed, one of the individuals, was in fact a Jewish philanthropist, as being reported right now. And online, there is a post going viral showing that this building, and specifically the Blackstone offices, were a target of the globalized, the Intifada protest movement, or whatever you want to call it. Now, I'm going to say it again. I think I'm going to take the least amount of assumptions here. He did shoot and kill an NFL employee. It was an NFL building. He did play football. Law enforcement says they found a note in his pocket saying, please study my brain. Apparently, his CTE caused him to drink antifreeze, and crazy always tends to be what makes the most sense. But there is an interesting reality to the anti-Israel narrative, and that is many people online are entertaining this theory because of it. They believe it's entirely possible this young man was, and this is pro-Israel and anti-Israel. Many people believe that the actual motivation was Israel and Blackstone. Blackstone, of course, has been buying up homes in the past and has been the subject of massive scrutiny for some time. And again, I'll just say this. I don't know. I'll go with the official narrative. But we are seeing this shift in the mainstream narrative as it pertains to Israel. Even just the other day, Seth Meyers calling out Israel. And this is corporate mainstream liberal comedy. So it is an interesting phenomenon. Now, I don't know if we're going to have a guest. We reached out to a few people who want to get a comment, but we will talk about this as well. The shift from the corporate press as it pertains to the Israel narrative. But first, we'll go to the official story, which again, I lean towards being most likely. Crazy person did crazy thing for crazy reasons tends to be the reality. I mean, the people that we see that are leftists, and even people on the right who are anti-Israel aren't going around just shooting up office buildings. But I got to mention, in D.C., these 2 Jewish, it was Israeli embassy staffers were shot and killed. So again, this theory, it exists, and a lot of people believe it. Now, before we get started, my friends, I want to give a shout out to Steven Crowder and the Mug Club. Welcome to the Rumble Morning Lineup. We're having a good time here on the Rumble Live show, so I do appreciate you guys. Smash the like button, share the show with everyone you know. You can follow me on X and Instagram at Timcast. And before we get started, we do have a great sponsor. It is AmericanFinancing.net/Tim. My friends, what if you could delay your next 2 mortgage payments? That's right. Imagine putting those 2 payments in your pocket and finally getting a little breathing room. It's possible when you call American Financing today. If you're feeling stretched by everyday expenses, groceries, gas bills piling up, you're not alone. Most Americans are putting these expenses on credit cards, and there doesn't seem to be a way out. American Financing can show you how to use your home's equity to pay off that debt. You need to call American Financing today before you get to a point where you can't make those payments. Their salary-based mortgage consultants are helping homeowners just like you restructure their loans and consolidate debt, all without upfront fees. And their customers are saving an average of $800 a month. That's like a $10,000 raise. It's fast, it's simple, and it could save your budget this summer. Call now before it's too late. 866-890-7811. That's 866-890-7811, or visit AmericanFinancing.net/Tim. And my friends, this weekend, the Culture War Podcast Live. Preferred seating sold out. General admission likely going to sell out very, very soon. We're expecting a sold out show with Michael Malice and angry cops debating the question of abolishing police or just police in general. Michael Malice, as you know, he's a troll. He's a comedian. He's an anarchist, and he is not big on police. Angry Cops, as you know, is also a troll and comedian and commentator, and he's literally a cop. So this one started selling quick. We did have that weird fiasco where they canceled the show and brought it back, so we might actually already be sold out. I don't know. Hopefully we don't double up on tickets, but we don't know what to expect. What I can say is this past weekend, we had the Culture War first episode. Is Trump still winning? And it was hilarious. Matan even was hilarious. Gavin was funny. Pisco Liddy defended his side vigorously to a crowd of boos and jeers. But we laughed a lot. It was a lot of fun. And it was a packed house. I would call it sold out effectively because I don't see how anyone else could have fit anywhere else in that building. It was amazing. And we think it's going to be even more intense this next show. So check out the DC Comedy Loft in the description. Come this Saturday in DC. It is going to be hilarious. And we may have a special liberal guest, big liberal, prominent, well-known. But again, the challenge with the liberals is they're always like real worried about coming. It is what it is. Let's start here with the official story from NBC News to give you guys the update. This was a tragic unfolding yesterday in New York City. NBC News reports, New York City shooting live updates. Police investigate motive after 5 people, including gunmen, are killed in office high-rise. They say 5 total dead. A New York City police officer and 3 civilians are dead after a gunman opened fire inside a high-rise corporate building in Manhattan. On Monday evening, the suspect died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Shane Devon Tamura, a 27-year-old from Vegas, has been identified by police as the gunman. Officials say he acted alone and has a documented mental health history. Tamura's motive has not been disclosed. Two officials familiar with the subject matter told NBC News, however, the suspect left a note in which he wondered if CTE, a brain disease caused by head trauma, was a possible cause of his mental illness. The shooting took place, first reported at 6:30 p.m., 345 Park Avenue, which houses several major businesses, including Blackstone, KPMG, and the NFL. Tamura may have targeted the NFL headquarters, Mayor Eric Adams said today. Now, we don't know for sure exactly what his motive was. The official narrative seems to be that this guy was targeting the NFL, at least based on this note they say was in his pocket. Immediately, I have questions. And that question is, how come when we get these other mass shootings, they don't release the motive? They don't release the manifesto or any information, but right now in this story, they're like, oh, and by the way, we haven't yet begun an investigation, but we did reach into his pocket and he hated the NFL, just so you know. Really? Okay, I guess. Now, there's conspiracies swirling online. To be fair, I don't know you can actually call it a conspiracy because they've not officially confirmed the motive, but theories that this NFL narrative has emerged as a means of stopping any panic. The argument is that if this guy was actually targeting Blackstone and pro-Israel groups and Jewish individuals, it could lead to a panic. Or some argue that if word gets out that people are arming themselves against pro-Israel or Jewish individuals, it could lead to copycats. Honestly, I have no idea. But at least online, some people think this may be the case. Let's explore this. The first thing I want to do is give a shout out to this image. This is a really amazing image that reportedly comes from inside the Blackstone HQ, where they used all the office furniture to barricade the doors when the shooting had begun. And many people have celebrated these men for taking decisive action to protect themselves, their colleagues. It's a terrifying photo, but I think it's worth showing. Now here's the story from Newsweek. Shane Devon Tamura's suicide note says he had CTE and calls out the NFL. They say the shooting took place in Manhattan, this we know. I will also mention that CNN and other outlets had claimed this guy was white. We'll talk about that too. Newsweek reports a suicide note was discovered in the suspect's back pocket that said he had suffered from CTE. CNN reported, citing an unnamed source with knowledge of the investigation. An unnamed source, we don't know who. They're claiming that's the motivation, huh? Or at least that's the evidence. The degenerative brain disease has been linked to repeated trauma to the head, including concussions, common in contact sports like football. Symptoms can be used to diagnose suspected CTE in the living, but can only be confirmed through a post-mortem examination of the brain because it requires examination of brain tissue. Football, quote, gave me CTE and it caused me to drink a gallon of antifreeze, the note read, according to CNN. You can't go against the NFL. They'll squash you. The note also asked for the suspect's brain to be studied, according to CNN, which said Tamura was a competitive football player in his youth. Newsweek had contacted the NFL for further comment via email sent outside regular business hours. I just want to pause real quick and ask this question. A young man did not play for the NFL, was not wronged directly by the NFL. They are alleging his motivation was the NFL, you can't go up against them. Okay, I guess, kind of out of nowhere. And this is where this theory is largely bubbling up from. Kind of out of nowhere that some random person wanted to kill NFL people? I want to clarify. He did. Okay, and I don't want to downplay if this is actually the motivation. But I just got to say, the reason I think people are asking if this is about Blackstone itself as an organization or Israel has to do with the fact that there are people threatening to kill and have killed over the issue of Israel, like those 2 embassy staffers not that long ago. There doesn't seem to be any strong correlation as to what this guy was doing online or whatever, where it would lead him to be like, ooh, the NFL. Again, he played football, but he wasn't in the NFL. It's not like the NFL did anything to him. So it's just strange. They say in a news conference on Monday, Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch said Tamura had a documented mental health history, and it may just be that he's crazy. It makes sense. Sane people don't do stuff like this. Commissioner Jessica Tisch said, according to our law enforcement partners in Vegas, Mr. Tamura had a documented mental health history. His motives are still under investigation, and we are working to understand why he targeted this particular location. NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell said in a message to his employees, we are deeply grateful to the law enforcement officers who responded to this threat quickly and decisively, and to Officer Islam who gave his life to protect others. Kathy Hochul said, tonight we mourn 4 New Yorkers, including one of New York's finest, taken in a senseless act of violence. Our hearts are with their loved ones and everyone affected by this tragedy, and we honor the first responders who bravely ran toward danger. The investigation into the shooting and his motive is ongoing. So again, this is the official corporate press narrative, but we don't know the official motive just yet. It's not been determined. Now, CNN, of course, is getting a lot of flack. CNN anchor Aaron Burnett flamed for saying NYC shooter Shane Tamura was possibly white. Let's see if we get audio on this.
What he looks like.
Here we go. I'll start again.
Here, John's reporting that they do know what he looks like. Male, possibly white, mustache, sunglasses, in that building, isolated to, they believe, to various locations, including upper floors, is where they're focused.
Possibly white. There was an image that went around. Now, I'm going to cut CNN some slack here, guys. I don't want to be unreasonable, nor do I want to be a tribal outrageist or whatever you want to call it. The reality is when the news broke, nobody really knew what was going on. And so if CNN's getting a report that he may be white, it's not that they looked at that picture and then said, that's a white guy. It's possible. It is. So I'm not going to cut him that much slack, but I'll give him a little. Aaron Burnett didn't see any photos. She got an earpiece in probably, and they said they think it might be a white male and said, okay. So for whatever it may be, people were reporting this. And then anyone who was sane and on Twitter saw that this was not a white male. In the first photos shared online, Tamura was captured in broad daylight walking into the office with an AR-15. Burnett said police knew the gunman had sunglasses, mustache, male, possibly white, during a broadcast shortly after the shooting Monday evening. I will stress, however, one thing we see a lot of is they'll say something like, they'll call someone white, and it'll be like a Honduran guy. Brown skin. When it's a criminal, they say, Hispanic, white Hispanic, which just means white Spanish speaker. But then you look at the guy and you're like, why are you calling that person white? That's not Latino, I guess. I don't know. And this is why people aren't going to cut Aaron Burnett much slack. You know what I mean? The assumption is the media does this. There's the old, I forgot, what is this, like Megyn Kelly's law or something like that? That if a news report doesn't tell you the race of the person, assume they're not white. Because whenever it's a white person, they'll tell you. And if it's not a white person, they'll still tell you. But let's talk about this theory. Manhattan Mingle, with this post, got over 500,000 views, says, although the perpetrator's motive has yet to be conclusively determined, the location of the shooting was the number 5 target on a list first distributed by the Globalize the Intifada activists in November of 2023. Meh. I saw this and I thought, meh. Really? It's Blackstone. And they post the address and information about it. MoMA, number 0, Combined TAC, University Club, World Jewish Congress, BlackRock, and Blackstone. There are a bunch of targets. This one was also in the NFL building. Maybe the guy was just nuts and blamed the NFL. The NFL had created this culture that had resulted in his CTE and didn't want to play football or something. Maybe. I gotta be honest. It seems like a whole lot of hoops to jump through. But maybe. I mean, we really don't know. Now, if we're going to say that this guy was actually motivated by the Globalize the Intifada, Zohran Mamdani, and leftist activists, and Seth Meyers, and this whole narrative about Israel, honestly, it's easier to believe. I'm not saying it's correct, but it is easier to believe because we've seen violence already, and this is a massive movement. This is actually an Instagram account, WOL Palestine, saying here are the targets. Blackstone executive Wesley LePatner, among 4 people killed in Midtown NYC shooting. Now, I know I'm going to get a lot of flack from everybody on this one. I mean, like the mainstream media and the corporate press are going to write that I'm a nut job and I'm a conspiracy theorist and all that. But while we're still trying to understand the motive, I think it's worth mentioning this narrative exists. And there are some interesting bits and bobs about it. Well, I do want to, I know it's difficult for the families of those who lost their lives and all that. So I do give my condolences. It's a tragedy. It's a horrible circumstance. This executive, Wesley LePatner, they say a senior managing director for the financial giant was shot and killed in the lobby of the Ritzy Park Avenue office tower. Quote, we are heartbroken to share that our colleague, Wesley LePatner, was among those who lost their lives in the tragic incident. Here you can see the photo that's gone viral of shooter Shane Tamura walking in with his rifle. And this is Wesley LePatner. It's a woman. A lot of people were, I believe that Wesley, the male name, was a man, is a woman. And she died. And she appears in videos. She was an executive at Blackstone. And a picture of her family and kids. It's tragic. She embodied the best of Blackstone. Our prayers are with her husband, children, and family. She joined Blackstone in 2014 and served as the global head of core real estate and chief executive officer for Blackstone Real Estate Income Trust, a $53 billion property owner, according to Bloomberg. Now I'm going to pause real quick and say this. This dude went in and was randomly shooting people. I don't think he had targets in mind. So this may all be coincidence. There is some interesting tidbits here as we get to the bottom of the story. And let me see if I can, here we go. It says, after the massacre in the lobby, Tamura allowed Owen to walk out of the elevator unharmed and then headed up to the 33rd floor home to the building-owned Rudin Properties offices. The shooter wanted to shoot at the NFL's office on levels 5 through 8, but mistakenly went up the wrong elevator banks. How do we know that? Now, he's claiming because the guy blamed the NFL, or at least that's what they've claimed, that he went in the wrong elevator. Maybe. Maybe he went in the right elevator. 5 through 8, but he went to the 33rd floor instead. Now, for people who don't know how New York skyscrapers work, there's different elevator shafts for different floors. So, for instance, if you go to like the New York Times building, I think it's how I could be the New York, but most of them work like this. The really big buildings will have like 3 elevator columns with, I think they'll have like 6 elevators each, or maybe 4. And you'll see on each column, it'll say 1 through 17, then it'll say 18 to 33, then it'll say like 34 to 51. So if he was trying to get to the NFL and didn't know this, because a lot of people don't, he could have walked to any, people do this all the time. They walk to a random elevator and get in and then realize there's no buttons in the elevator and the elevator is going where it goes. So some of these elevators, I think it's how New York Times works. There's a keypad. That's it. No up or down. You walk into the keypad and you type the floor in that you want. The elevator will come, it'll bring you that floor, and you can't go to any other floor. You have to go back down and use a keypad. It's interesting. It could be that simply because a Blackstone employee had come down or had called the elevator, that's how he ended up on that floor. But if he was targeting the NFL, why would he then be satisfied with being some random floor and shooting at random people? Unless it wasn't random. And the woman he killed was running the real estate program. And Blackstone has long been slammed for buying up real estate. And this guy, a Zoomer, there's easier motivations here than just he hated the NFL, which is kind of weird. And okay, I guess. I mean, maybe, sure. What do I know? If I have no reason to doubt that they found this letter. But we can look at a couple different motives, Israel being a big one, as well as Gen Z can't buy homes. Blackstone and BlackRock buying up properties en masse, driving up the prices. This narrative has been persistent for a long time. There's real motive there. But again, we're still just stretching because we don't know. I don't know, man. The NFL offices were on the 5th through 8th floor, and he went to the 33rd. They say must have been a mistake. Must have, or maybe not. Here's Wesley LePatner, Jewish philanthropist. LePatner, a Blackstone executive, served on the boards of trustees of the Abraham Joshua Heschel School and UJA Federation of New York. Interesting. This is from ejewishphilanthropy.com, breaking news. Is it possible that when people say the motivation was anti-Israel and anti-Jewish, that he was actually targeting these people intentionally, or at least this person? Here's the Telegraph. I'm sorry, the New York Times, the Telegraph. Blackstone president donates $125 million to Israeli medical school. The gift is the largest in Tel Aviv University's history and is expected to help relieve Israel's shortage of doctors. This is from May. Could it be that he was targeting Blackstone and that it was on the Intifada protester hit list because they are massively pro-Israel? And Blackstone's president had given the largest gift to Tel Aviv University in its history? I mean, that's a big move, and especially published by the New York Times. And it just so happened that he killed a Jewish philanthropist executive in the lobby? Again, there's a lot of stretches here because we have to assume that he studied this, he knew who these people were, and it wasn't just some lunatic. We do have this story from Fast Company. Look at this. This is from January of 2024. Blackstone is back to being a top player in the housing market. Here are the numbers. Blackstone will own the third largest portfolio of U.S. single-family homes once it completes its Tricon residential acquisition. This is interesting stuff. We don't know his motivation, but we can break down a handful of facts. First, they say they found a note in his pocket saying he suffered from CTE and you can't go up against the NFL. He shot people in the lobby of a building which houses the NFL and Blackstone, among other companies. In the lobby, he didn't just shoot and kill an employee of Blackstone. He did shoot and seriously injure an NFL employee. They say he was targeting. Okay. He then entered an elevator that brought him to the 33rd floor, Blackstone offices, where he continued his rampage. It's hard to know, isn't it? The Blackstone office was targeted by anti-Israel protesters, and we've seen violence from these groups in the past, from groups that have been targeting either Israel, supporting the Israel embassy. We've seen the university protests, so we honestly just don't know. But I think it's too simple to dismiss these narratives. What I will say, my friends, is, and I would like to stress this, the NFL did lose an employee, so I don't want to just say that we know for sure and this is a Israel or Blackstone thing. I do want to at least point this out. We talked about Blackstone for some time. Blackstone had been buying up homes. Today, boomers have about, 75% of boomers own property. That's right, 75. And I hear it a lot because boomers always say, hey, don't blame the boomers. No. I won't blame you, boomer. But the generation itself has a disproportionate amount of wealth and corporate securities, etc. 75% of boomers own property, much of which they own more than one. Gen X, about 72 to 75, own property, but one home. Millennials, 50% own property. And among Gen Z, I think it's somewhere around like 5 to 7%. Gen Alpha doesn't own any property. They're 15 years old. I think the oldest is 13 to 15. The narrative is that Gen Z will never own a home. They're not going to be able to find a living wage or have a family. They're in their late 20s. They should already have families. And I'll warn you guys of this. As we've talked about, 2008 housing market crash. We were warned by the press there would be a shortage of 18-year-olds 18 years later. And here we are, and it's true. The market is hurting because of it. Now, that was just one crash that affected a large portion of millennials. Half of millennials still own property, so many made it out. The issue, however, is that today, Gen Z is facing a generalized environment consistent with the market crash. We millennials, it was a dip and a recovery. Some of us made it out, not everybody. Gen Z, they're in a perpetual crash. There's no buying property. Right now, people have complained. Young Gen Z couples trying to buy property, they'll go and they'll say, here's a house on the market for $300K. And they'll say, what would you say to 275? And they'll say, not interested. They'll say, okay, fine, we'll do the 300. Then they come back and say, you know what? Blackstone came in at 325. They offered us 25K above market, driving the prices up. They get free money from the Fed, basically. The Fed just gives money to whoever. They can buy whatever they want, create a massive portfolio. You will own nothing and you will be happy. Gen Z is seeing the reality of land ownership and the American dream stripped away by companies like BlackRock and Blackstone. Could that have been a motivating factor? Honestly, I have no idea. But one thing I will say is I do feel like it's becoming increasingly harder to believe the unhinged narrative. He's a crazy guy who hated the NFL. Well, it's hard to believe because even crazy people are pushed in a direction by some kind of narrative machine. Out of sight, out of mind. And if it's true that crazy people shoot people for nonsensical reasons, wouldn't we see a lot more? Maybe not. Maybe crazy mass shootings are just rare. Among most mass shootings we see, like namely in Chicago, it's based on honor and insults. There's logic behind it. It's not good logic. They're not thinking for the future. But it's not like they're believing that the NFL has broken their brains. That's a nonsensical, weird conspiracy theory. So I don't know for sure. What I do know is that the anti-Israel narrative has gone mainstream. So we're going to jump into the next story. We do have, I do believe, just a moment ago, you may have noticed me look over at somebody. I do believe we have an interview lined up to discuss the issue of the shift in the conversation around Israel. The narrative, mainstream, it's gone anti-Israel. Take it for whatever you want to say or whatever you want to believe. Maybe that's the motive. Smash the like button, my friends. Share the show with everyone you know. We'll be back with that interview at 4 p.m. at rumble.com/TimPool, as well as youtube.com/Timcast. And once again, share the show, smash the like button, and we'll see you all then.